This is the first of two videos exploring how ideology influences our actions. Should ideology shape our responses to issues in times of peace and crisis? Liberal democracies are characterized by free and fair elections, rule of law, separation of powers, and the protection of civil liberties such as speech, assembly, and religion. There's many people living in liberal societies who believe if we could just help all of those illiberal or anti-liberal nations be more like us, the world would be a better place. Now, of course, we've already looked at how even the most liberal nation states like Canada are illiberal at times. And in addition, the ideas of the Enlightenment took a long time to absorb into our mainstream society. Who's to say we're right? Well, we think we are. Here's an example of how it gets complicated. Israel is a liberal society, but the way they treat the Palestinians is terribly illiberal. Some Palestinian communities are literally surrounded by a wall, and many Palestinians are discriminated against. So how does Israel justify their illiberal actions? Security. There are Palestinian terrorist groups that threaten the security of Israeli settlements with rockets and suicide bombings. Some have said that the developed nations and/or the UN needs to put more pressure on Israel to settle the land disputes. But then again, the UN hasn't been all that successful in solving global conflicts. The UN is a great demonstration of a liberal organization with a focus on protecting human rights and treating each nation as an equal in the General Assembly. The hope for the UN is to establish global harmony, but in cases like the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Somalia, those same rules that help the UN to be liberal also hamper its ability to act. That respect for national sovereignty, which is kind of like individualism and the right to choose your own course, means the UN can't just come in and tell another country what to do. Economically, there's also arguments in favor of greater liberalism globally. It's been shown that nation-states that trade with each other are less likely to fight with each other, known as the Golden Arches theory or the Dell theory, because nation-states with a middle class, that's who eats at McDonald's, usually have a population that wants the government to ensure there's a safe environment to encourage trade within the country and encourage foreign investment. That's where Dell comes in, because their computer components are outsourced from nation-states around the world. Organizations like the EU, IMF, the World Bank, WTO, they all encourage trade liberalization or free trade. But opponents argue that these institutions merely spread US influence and push an individualist agenda because they don't focus on things like the protection of the workers or the environment. In addition, that increased globalization has led to the Americanization of pop culture. Remember that from grade 10 social? What about things like climate change, natural disasters, pandemics? Can liberal ideas of individualism and freedom help us to deal with these problems? Supporters of classical liberalism argue that people can choose to help each other and that people are naturally compassionate and philanthropic. That's a big word that basically says you're willing to give to charity. Just look at the millions who privately donated to help groups like the Red Cross respond to the disasters in Indonesia and Haiti. In addition, many government-sponsored programs, like those intended to end famine in Africa, haven't been able to solve the problem. Throwing more tax money at something doesn't mean it's going to get fixed. Supporters of more socialist ideas feel that the best way to, say, react to a natural disaster is to have the government take tax dollars and use that money to rebuild the community. That way, the citizens in trouble don't have to depend on the charity of others. In addition, there's times when liberal freedoms have to be abandoned. To prevent the spread of a pandemic, you may have to quarantine some people. In order to affect real climate change policies, you're going to have to make sacrifices for the collective good. So you can see, there's a lot to think about.